All right, so for this video, I kind of wanted to talk about basically, um, like, are they, is, because this is like an intuitive download I've been getting, which is basically that the entities that are behind this reincarnation matrix, right? If you look at like the alien, like the grays, right? The gray aliens. You look at the like the Draco reptilians and stuff like that, right? One of the things that I've been getting an intuitive download on is basically, are these entities really like the end game, basically, or is it the entities, or is it something beyond the entities, right? Because if you look at like the hive mind aspect of all of this, it might be that like the reptoids, like the Draco reptilians and like the Greys are just more, they're just more pawns in this game, and it makes me, and you know what it makes me think of is it makes me think of zombies, right? Or it makes me think of like the Borg in Star Trek. Right? You look at that, and it's like you have like certain entity races, but they're infected by something else that transcends, all the entity races that might be shown, right? And this might be one of those things where it's like, okay, yes, like the Draco reptilians are obviously the enemy here, but could it be that, and this began because of like a thought experiment that I had, which is basically, like what would happen if we, killed all the Draco reptilians in like a war or something, right? Like what if we just wiped them from existence, right? And one of the things that I sort of came across was like, okay, what if in the process of doing that, what if humanity basically, right, becomes sort of like the new Draco reptilian? What if we adopt the same state of consciousness that these entities have and become these entities, right? Which is, and that's really the goal with like with the brain chip. That's the goal with keeping us in this reincarnation matrix. Is eventually they want to assimilate the human mind with artificial intelligence, basically, and they want to assimilate it into a hive mind, so that there's that hive mind sort of aspect to it. And so it makes me think, are these Draco reptilians just are more pawns for, this sort of, if you think about like Saturn, right? Like for the sort of Saturn energy, or is it, or could it be also, because you know what it makes me think of is it also makes me think of like you have angels and then you have fallen angels, right? So and this might be sort of like a weird concept, but could it be that there are, Draco reptilians that are just chill, right? It's almost like if you're, in the Middle East, like if your only experience with Americans is like just American soldiers shooting at you, and then you go to America and you say, oh, okay, most of these people are chill. Like, what if the same thing is happening with like the Draco reptilians, but that they're infected with a certain mind virus, that they're infected, by a certain state of consciousness that makes them behave in this extremely evil and extremely deluded manner as well, right? Like what if they're infected by something that's beyond like just them looking like lizard people, right? Because if you think about it this way, right, the thing about it is that you have to go beyond the oh my gosh, what's it called? Like you have to go beyond form, right? Because obviously, like the appearance of a lizard person is just, that's just one aspect of this, right? Is the like the name and the form and like whatever avatar body a person's inhabiting. Like that's just one element of all this. So it could be that, like that these Draco reptilians, or like the like the gray aliens, are not necessarily not necessarily like malevolent in their own right, but they might be infected by something else that is malevolent, right? And I'm not discounting the idea that, like, oh, okay, like the Draco reptilians, that they might just be evil just by their own nature, and that seems to be the case. But this is just like a theory that I just want to talk about, which is basically that, is it possible that these entities are, somewhat infected by something evil that's sort of behind the scenes, and that like one of the things that happens is that we might pin the blame on the Draco reptilians, but it might not be the Draco reptilians. It might be that the Draco reptilians are just more pawns to this hive mind, right? And this is something that this sort of Saturn demonic energy does, is that it uses entity races in order to carry out its evil, right? Like because these entities and this this Saturn energy, right? This whatever entity or whatever, you know, excuse me, but like whatever, force, right? Energy, state of consciousness is behind all of this, right? It doesn't have a creative imagination. It doesn't have an agency or a will to act like human beings do. And so what it does is it has to possess, and this is where you get into like demonic possession, is that it has to like possess other entity races to do the work, to do the dirty work, basically. And it really makes me think of, like maybe these entities, like in appearance, might seem like lizard people, might seem like like the the gray aliens, which like the reptilians and the grays are like the malevolent, entity races, right? But I just wanted to, because I'm thinking like from solving this problem, like from a problem solving perspective, how is it that how do we solve this problem ultimately, right? Is that, do we just kill all the like, do we just kill all the Draco reptilians? Do we just like what is it that we're trying to kill or eliminate here? And it seems to be that it goes beyond the entity races, that the entity races are just a front for a certain state of consciousness, or for a certain energy that might be Saturn. Like Saturn might be like a sentient sort of entity. Like Saturn might just be like a sentient planet that has mentally, like psychically, taken over certain entity races to do its bidding, right? And so that's the thing that I've just been thinking about, is like, what if the Draco reptilians aren't the end? Like what if like the Draco reptilians are just more puppets in this spiritual battle? What if they're just other disposable puppets in this spiritual battle of good versus evil? In this sort of like, what if like the reincarnation matrix, right? Create which has been set up by the Draco reptilian race. Like, what if that entire setup wasn't even like the reptoids' ideas? Like, what if the mind control? What if they're mind controlled in the same way that they try to mind control? And that's how hive minds pass around. Like that's how viruses spread. Is that you infect one entity race, and then the entity race infects another entity race, and then infects another, right? And this is exactly how the Borg operate in Star Trek. Right, this is exactly how hive minds operate. Is that you infect a class of entities, and then they infect more, and then they infect more, and then they infect more, and so the entire idea of, and if you look at like MK Ultra and Monarch programming, like mind control seems to be a huge part of all of this, right? And it seems to be a huge part of not only how like the Draco reptilians control humanity, but what if like the Draco reptilians are controlled by the same tactics, right? And if you look at like a trauma-based mind control in the bloodlines, right? If you look at, and this, what this makes me think of is, it makes me think of like someone like Elon Musk. He talks about getting bullied and hospitalized as a kid, and I'm thinking like, okay, what if that was like a ritual or something that was set up because Elon Musk is like is part of one of these bloodlines, right? One of these Illuminati bloodlines. And the mind control tactics that they use is that they intentionally in these hybrid bloodlines, like the Nephilim bloodlines, the half human, half reptilian bloodlines, like what they do is they intentionally traumatize their children in order to control them, so that they stay under mind control, so that they can be puppets of the system, so that they say the things that the system wants them to say, in order to carry out this world domination, world takeover, new world order agenda. And so I'm thinking like, literally the same mind control tactics that are used to control humanity might be being used to uh, on against the reptilians themselves. Like the reptilians might use that against each other, and Saturn might just be using that against the reptilians, and it might not even be the reptilian race that is like the end game, right? That might be just like another sort of a veil that we have to pierce in order to get, okay, what's the root cause of of all of this? Like what's the root cause? Like the moon. If you look at like the moon matrix, if you look at like the reincarnation trap, if you look at the demonic consciousness, right? It's like we have to solve that problem in order for creation to move forward. We have to solve this problem of evil, and eventually it comes down to a state of consciousness. Eventually, it comes down to the state of consciousness, not just whether you inhabit a reptilian, a gray, a human, a like a Lyran sort of body, like a sort of avatar body. But at the end of the day, my intuition, my gut tells me that there might be something beyond the Draco Reptilian that might be behind all of this. That it might, that the Draco Reptilians might be. It's almost like if you think about it like a mind virus, or if you think about like a disease, their cancer might be more terminal than ours is. Right? They might be infected by the same thing that's trying to infect us right now, but it might just be working through that entity race at this moment. And so I just really wanted to make a video about that because that's sort of like a weird intuitive download that I'm getting, is that there might be something beyond the Draco Reptilians and like the malevolent entity races that might be driving this. There might be some fundamental form of energy, or some fundamental force or state of consciousness that might be driving those entities, beyond the entities themselves, beyond the name and the form of these entities. There might be like Saturn, like the Saturn energy, the black cube of Saturn, that might be ultimately driving all of this evil, right? If you think about like Sauron in Lord of the Rings, right? It's like you have the orcs, right, and like the armies of all these entity races, but at the end of the day, the evil is Sauron, right? The whole, like the one all-seeing eye, reptilian eye, the force of evil, the force of darkness, the darkness itself is the core of the issue. And so, if you want to look at like Lord of the Rings, it's like throwing the ring into the volcano and having it burn up, like destroying that state of consciousness seems to be it seems to be like the ultimate sort of solution. Is that it's a consciousness problem. It's not about necessarily entity races, because that seems to be like the entity races, like the Greys, like the Reptoids. They seem to be like, at least in my eyes, they seem to be pawns to some sort of higher force. Because I was looking at that and I'm like, okay, like it can't just be about the body that you inhabit, right? Because it doesn't, just because you're in a human body doesn't necessarily, like, that's the human body is not the true self, right? You can have good humans and bad humans. You can have serial killers, and then you can have human beings that are extremely good on the inside, but it's the same entity race but different state of consciousness, and that might be something that might be driving this evil at the end of the day. And oh my gosh, there was something else that I wanted to say. Oh yeah. So in the Lord of the Rings, right? This is what I wanted to say. In the Lord of the Rings, the orcs are actually distorted versions of elves, right? And this goes back to something that J.R.R. Tolkien himself actually said, which is that evil cannot create anything new. It can only corrupt and ruin what good forces have invented or made, right? And so you look at that, and what ends up happening is that, like, or based on how I see it, and based on like this intuitive download, I do believe that you look at like angels and fallen angels, right? The modern day sort of or like the way like the Draco reptilian race that we might be dealing with on this planet right now might not be a true representation of that entity race. It might just be like that they're infected by the black cube of Saturn in a way, right? Because yet again, it has to, and this is something that I'm saying, right? Is that it has to go beyond name and form. It has to go beyond, whatever video game avatar body that you inhabit. And this is a state of, it's about consciousness. Everything is a state of consciousness, and that evil state of consciousness is ultimately. That evil energy is ultimately what's driving all of this, not necessarily the form of a reptoid, even though that's a huge part of it. That is a huge part of it. And make no mistake, like the reptilians and the Greys, just assume that they're evil. You just say no to them. Just be streetwise, be smart about this. But when it comes to like ultimately like solving this problem, breaking this matrix apart, I do believe that that, like, the entities might be manipulated by a more hidden, sort of more subtle force behind the scenes. But yeah, that's the video. All right, so this is just a quick little sort of sort of note that I wanted to add at the end of this video, which whenever I talk about going beyond the entities, right? One of the things I wanted to talk about that I sort of thought of right after I recorded the video was basically the first thing that I wanted to talk about was Hellraiser. They have like the Cenobites in Hellraiser, and then you have like yet again the entity race of like the Cenobites, and then you have Leviathan, who is like the basically like the head honcho, and he's like a geometric like diamond shape. And then of course you have like the cube of Saturn symbolism in the Hellraiser film, with like the lament configuration, right? So you have like the entity race of the Cenobites, and then you have Leviathan, right? The force behind the entities, right? And another thing that I wanted to talk about too is I wanted to talk about like the God Hand in Berserk, right? If you know, like I haven't read the manga, but I know that like I know like about like the God Hand, and then you have the oh my gosh, like I don't know like what the individual like the apostles, right, of the God Hand, like yeah, like the entity race, and then you have like what they serve is they serve like the quote unquote idea of evil and behind the scenes. So you have like the apostles in like the God Hand, right, which is like the organization, and then you have like the fundamental driving force, which is the quote unquote idea of evil, which is behind the entities. And so I just wanted to mention those two things because like that really sort of drives home the point that it goes beyond the entity races whenever it comes to the stuff. Yet again, the state of consciousness, the force that's behind the entity, seems to be the bottom line, the most important thing to whenever it comes to fighting this evil is like the idea and the energy of the evil itself, and the state of consciousness is really what's going on here and really what the problem is. But yeah, that's the video.